I've got far too many favourite memories from my time here. Friends, obviously, friends that I still have, were a huge part of my 7 years at King Edward's. But I think it's the extracurricular stuff that I really enjoyed and remember. Playing in the orchestra, going on orchestra tours were my absolute favourite part of my 7 years at King Edward's. We used to go to Lyon and play in concerts around different countries, and that was just fantastic fun. And also being part of the drama and the sports events here, being part of the tennis team and hockey, and getting involved in all of the different sports, and being part of the performances that everyone would do. I suppose most of it was because it was with the boys' school as well, which made it a lot of fun, the orchestra and the drama, but they were just sections that I really still have great memories of and great photos of. I was pretty sporty when I was at King Edward's, both with the winter sports, a lot of hockey and netball, and in the summer loved rounders, but also tennis, and tennis was the one that I was really good at. Tennis, I would play for the school, played for county, played for university when I got there as well. But a great sports hall. I do remember spending a lot of time out on the sports pitches and in the sports hall, and I really just loved playing any sport. There's a real mixture though of, if you do like classical music, you had to decide on Saturday morning which you were going to do, whether you were going to play in the school sports teams or whether you were going to do orchestra rehearsals in your area. So I was in the Wolverhampton Youth Orchestra and they rehearsed on Saturday morning, so there was a bit of a clash there, but I absolutely loved school sports, always played them as much as I could, and then went on to do the same when I was at university. There's a big influence from my time at King Edward's, partly just writing for school magazines, the Phoenix I can't remember what it was called, Phoenix magazine I think it was at the time, the Idler, which was a sort of newsletter, and I used to write sports articles for that, which eventually was something that I ended up doing as a career. But just playing sport, being involved with sport, knowing that that was something that I wanted to do. And even the classical music side, from the time of being at King Edward's, I wanted to be on Classic FM, I wanted to be involved with Classic FM, and that was the background of playing with the orchestra here and loving the violin and piano. And many years later, I finally managed to become a presenter on Classic FM and have now been presenting for them for the last few years, and combined my two loves. So I've done shows with Andy Murray, Shane Warne, Clive Woodward, Annabel Croft, some of the Olympic gold medalists, talking about how the calmness of classical music really helps them in their sports and helps them to train or maybe drive somewhere when they're a little bit aggro or feeling a bit too adrenaline fueled. They'll listen to classical music. So I've actually combined the two loves that I had at King Edward's and used those in my career. That's what I do now. I fell into TV and radio. When I was at King Edward's, the careers side of thing was much more streamlined and straight, I think, and I wasn't really somebody who looked outside of the main areas, doctors, lawyers, that kind of thing. And my parents played badminton with somebody in Wolverhampton, which is where we were from. We used to travel to school every day from Wolverhampton. He was the local sports reader on Beacon Radio in Wolverhampton, the commercial station there, and I used to get very excited every time I heard him on the radio doing the sports news, and so he said to come in and see what he did, because my parents told him that I got very excited, and I just loved it. I just went in on a Saturday afternoon, he was watching football, writing about the football. I thought that was incredible. I just couldn't quite believe that was a job. And then I went to the Express and Star in Wolverhampton and asked if I could do some work experience. And that happened during Wimbledon, which I would just sit at home and watch anyway. So they asked me to write some articles about what was happening at Wimbledon, and I just couldn't quite believe that that was a job. I didn't realise that was something I could do. But from that point onwards, it was absolutely my single-minded focus that that was what I was going to be doing with my career. My parents thought it was a bit of a phase, but it is what I do now. I think the part of my job that I really enjoy is the live element, and particularly I do interviews with footballers and tennis players straight after matches, and that is incredibly nerve-wracking because there's an awful lot of adrenaline or anger or joy in them after their match results, but to go straight in and be the first person to speak to them as soon as a football match is finished, to the players or to the man of the match or to the manager, and the same with tennis in the summer. I tend to do the on-court interviews at Wimbledon and at Queen's Club, and do that around the world at other tournaments as well. But the players, as soon as they finished a match, they sit down and then they stand up and get to the middle of the court, and I'm there asking them questions straight away within a couple of minutes of them finishing their match. So talking to the likes of Novak Djokovic or Serena Williams or Andy Murray particularly, who's done so much for British tennis, has just been an absolutely fascinating part of my career. And also some of the people that played tennis when I was younger that are now friends of mine, which is quite a strange way for things to have turned out, but people I used to watch when I was here at King Edward's, I now consider to be friends of mine, which is an interesting part of the sports journey that I've been on. There are so many highlights. I've been very, very lucky in my career. I think probably number one and the most emotional I ever got was Andy Murray winning his first Wimbledon at 2013. I was part of the BBC Sport team. I was doing commentary, not on that match, but in previous matches, and being part of that team and being on centre court when Andy Murray won that first Wimbledon, particularly having lost the final the year before to Roger Federer, was just a huge moment for the country in terms of sport. A man hadn't done that for such a long time, 77 years I think it was at the time, and then for him to go on and do that again in 2016. He had won a Grand Slam before that at the US Open, but to do it in this country was incredible. And we had the London Olympics in 2012 and I worked on that, which were fantastic. 2014 Commonwealth Games in this country, and the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham just recently. That was just incredible to be back in Birmingham. I don't live here anymore, but it was just fantastic to see the atmosphere. It was just amazing to see Birmingham embracing the Commonwealth Games in that way, but also just being able to travel around the world. And I've done Olympics and World Cups in Brazil and in Tokyo and in Qatar, and being able to go to those events and see how different countries do those events, some of which have been obviously quite controversial, but others of which have just been an absolute festival of sport and fun, and it's just an amazing part of my job that I really enjoy. So yeah, I don't really have one highlight, sorry. I do quite a lot of conferences and talks on how to get into the industry. Things have changed an awful lot from when I started. I didn't really know this was something that you could do. You could become a sports presenter, particularly being female and being brown when I started out, but that has changed a lot, and it very much is about getting that first step in the door, applying to as many different places as you can to try and do some work experience. That's changed so that hopefully it's paid work experience now. It didn't used to be, which changes which classes can go into that area as well. I think it makes a big difference. It's moved around the country, it's not just London based. There are centres for different companies around all of the UK now. So it's getting in and just talking to people, just try and get some advice from somebody who is in the industry. Look at names on television and radio programmes, look at names in the newspaper, look online, follow people on Instagram, and maybe follow them that way. And you can get in touch so much more easily now because you can get in touch with people via social media. So I'd suggest anyone that you think is quite good and you would like to get some advice for, just contact them, because most of the time they will actually get back to you. And they will give you some very helpful advice as to how they got into the industry. But it is about preparation, absolutely prep. And somewhere like King Edward's probably prepares you for that quite well. And having a passion and following that passion. My passion was sport and classical music, both of which I've managed to follow. I also do quite a lot of cookery as well, so I'm sort of going into a slight sideline of that. But anything that you love doing, that's when it comes to television, radio, newspapers, the media in general, as long as you have that passion and you have that enthusiasm, then that will definitely translate to whatever you want to do in this industry.